Welcome to the Taylor Made Tasty podcast. I'm Taylor, retired serial quitter turned goal boss coach, speaker, and consultant. I believe a beautiful life starts with a beautiful mindset. Join me as we amplify confidence, resilience, and actionable tools on the road to quit quitting on you and your vision. You are worthy of your goals, so let's go get there. Hey y'all, welcome back to another episode of Taylor Made Tasty, the podcast. Along with my special guest, Amy Gartenberg, we are going to discuss how to get unstuck. Simple, actionable steps you can take to get clear on what isn't working and connect with your truest desires. Join me for a discussion on action steps to create forward momentum. Hey Goal Boss Babes, quick announcement. I am so excited to share with you my free coaching event for April. Spring Cleaning Mindset Reset, a 3-day free challenge starting Monday, April 25th. For 3 days, I will work through your overwhelm, stress, and burnout to take you to a place of peace, in control of your time, and feeling organized. Each day is less than 30 minutes of work with digestible, bite-sized coaching so you can purge your mental closet, clean and dust, and organize your overwhelm and leave feeling refreshed and reset from top to bottom. Sign up for free today at tailormadetasty.com/quick links. I am so excited to spring clean your mindset with you. Our guest today is Amy Gartenberg. She is a psychotherapist and life coach based in Nashville, Tennessee. Her work centers around helping people break free from others' expectations and live a life that feels authentically theirs. Amy's own healing journey inspires her offerings of coaching and counseling. She found that once she came back home to her body and started trusting herself, everything changed. When she's not counseling or coaching, Amy is a lover of the simple pleasures in life. You can usually find her reading a young adult novel in the backyard with her fiance and their very energetic standard poodle. And she loves to be barefoot as much as possible and likes clothes that feel like pajamas. Hi, Amy. Thank you for being on the podcast. Excited for our discussion on this topic today.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me, Taylor. I'm super passionate about this topic, so I'm excited to dive in.
Yes, love that. Okay, so forward momentum, getting unstuck actually came up recently in a conversation with a family member because I was talking about how there's this concept that you sort of win at life if you can control the chaos, or just like making life a little bit less of a mess. And she said for her that it felt less chaotic and messy, but more that she was stuck and just feeling stagnant. And I think sometimes the hardest part is identifying what you're actually feeling and attaching words and feelings to the actions that you're taking in life or even the inaction that's happening. So can you speak on ways to identify if you are actually stuck in life?
Yeah, I love this question because it really it causes people to stop and reflect. It caused me to stop and reflect about that because, first off, I think you know it when you feel it. Like when someone feels stuck, I think it's even a visceral physical sensation, right? Where things feel really stagnant and uncomfortable. And I think oftentimes why we go to that word of just being stuck is because maybe we've been making decisions to please other people and we've been doing that for so long that we have gotten so off course from a life that feels really good and meaningful to us. So it's kind of this feeling of looking around and being like, how did I get here? I don't even know where to start. I don't even know what I want. I don't know how to get back there. And I like some big markers I think of feeling stuck are when there's a lot of thinking and a lot of processing without a lot of action. And we can talk about, why that can happen. But I think that's an easy way to classify it is when you find yourself more caught up in your thoughts and taking less and less action. And also, I like to think about like when fear is quote unquote driving the bus, when fear or uncertainty is driving the bus. And that means that like you are allowing those emotions to lead the course of your life. So that might manifest as constantly thinking of reasons why not, why you can't make any changes, why you can't make any action, because you just feel really stuck in that place. You feel fearful of making any change at that point.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's really something that we have all dealt with at some point in life, right? Asking our question, like, where do I even start? Where you just feel so stuck that you don't even know how to get out of the mud to even take the next step, right? So now that someone can identify as stuck, they're like, yes, everything Amy just said is super relatable, and that's what I'm feeling, and I'm asking myself all of these questions. I always coach that pain plus reflection equals progress. So, like, when we're in the pain and we can identify what it is and reflect on it, then we can start to make that plan of progressing, right? So, where the pain may be us being stuck and reflecting on how we got stuck is so impactful, like whether it's burnout or overwhelm or stress. But what are some of the best ways to get clear on what isn't working in their life?
Okay. I love this question too. Um, when I was thinking about this earlier, I think um, the first thing that came to mind is perfectionism. And I think it's very common for perfectionism to poke its little head up in this area because it's like, well, you can't do anything until you're really clear on what's not working, And I think that perfectionism is just like the sneaky cousin of fear. And so when we see that perfectionism coming up, um, and those thoughts going to a place of, I don't even know what's not working, I don't even know where to start, that's just another version of fear, right? That's coming up around the what ifs of taking action. So I just wanted to name that. Um, and that you don't need to be crystal clear on everything before you start. I think that's a big thing that keeps people stuck. So that is okay. Things can feel cloudy and you can feel unsure. Um, the other thing that comes to mind is those thoughts that are in someone's head, what they're ruminating on, the things that keep them up at night, the voice that maybe the more you try to push it down, the louder it becomes. That voice is usually telling you the places in which you're feeling stuck, right? It's kind of like you know what it is, and it's the thing that you try to ignore most likely the most. And one way to really explore what that could be is I love this journal prompt of what am I afraid might be true, and that's just a really gentle way to explore maybe what's coming up for you, maybe in what areas you'd like to see some change, because it just maybe it might be true, right? Like we don't have to commit to it right now. It's gentle, it's in a journal, it's just for you. So just exploring what am I afraid might be true. I found that to be a really, really helpful tool.
Yes, I love that you named perfectionism too, because that is is so part of the problem. Like it is part it's a huge part of the problem because so often we're like, well, if I can't do it 100% right, then I why even start at all, you know? So you're asking yourself, where do I even begin? Then you come up with an answer for that, and then you think, well, I can't do that because I can't do it 100%. Where it's like if you just start I teach this practice of like 70%, that if you were consistent 70% of the time, you're still going to get to that goal. It just may take you a little bit longer. But if you can keep and maintain 70%, that feels so much more doable than I have to be at 100 all of the time, right?
Yeah.
So I love that you brought that up too.
Yeah, it's I just find so often, and like even in my own lived experience too, of this feeling of like I don't know what I'm moving towards, so I'm afraid to move away from it is where I am now, right? And we don't have to know what you're going towards all the time to know not this, right? There are little baby steps you can take away from not this without knowing for certain where it is you're headed or where you want to land. And I think perfectionism is just another version of fear that's like, well, no, you have to know. You have to know where you're going before you let this go. So, mhm.
Absolutely, yes. So, with the goal of creating forward momentum, tapping into the big picture, I feel like is so crucial to create that discipline and motivation to get to your goals. Being able to see that big picture. So, can you give us some simple, actionable steps to connect with our truest desires that allow us to see that big picture when we are feeling stuck?
Yeah, so we're in this, I'm just kind of putting it together in my head. So we're in this place of like, not this. Maybe you're taking steps out of not this, but you're not really sure what where you're headed. So some ways to kind of clarify those desires and like identify what it is you actually want to be moving towards. So, one practice I love, well, first of all, I want to say do not take this too seriously. I think that's really important. Like, there's an element of this that should feel like play, that should feel like adventure, like returning to being a little a kid where lots of things can strike your interest and we can follow something, we can follow desire just because it's interesting to you. And there's trial and error that comes with that, of course, of like, oh, I tried this thing, it just didn't jive with me, but I'm going to try this other thing. And we can see that a lot, in themes like intuitive eating or intuitive movement, where it's, I think this is what my body wants. I'm going to try it. I get some feedback on whether or not that jives for me. And the same is true when we're talking about bigger desires. So I like to call it like just noticing the pings. So if something strikes your attention, right? Like you see an ad for a photo class or your friends talking about this vacation they just went to this mountain, or just a random book looks really interesting to you. Those small pings are giving us information, and that's where the trial and error comes in. So can you try it? Like, can you go to that photo class and see what that's like? um, can you read that book? Can you plan some sort of vacation? And of course there's an element of privilege that comes with how many pings you're able to follow, and the cost, both time and money, of those things. But I think any size, anywhere on the scale, big or small, those desires, if we can follow them and get that information, that can be really, really helpful. Um, and goodness, what else did I want to say on that topic? Oh, that like, okay, journaling. I love journaling. I know it can be, some people love it, some people hate it, but a way to look at journaling is that it's a way to build a stronger relationship with yourself. Like sometimes it's hard to be honest with the outside world through our behaviors or through our words until we're honest with ourselves. And so I think journaling is a really awesome practice to just get clear and to build a stronger, more trusting relationship with ourselves so we can act on those desires.
Yeah, I also like that you brought up, time and money, and that does play into our truest desires, and where you're looking back and thinking, you know what, I want to hike, Mount Kilimanjaro or whatever. That's like your truest desire, but where can you start small? Again, like where can you start, in your own backyard? Can you go hiking on a hill or a mountain that you have nearby? Or I want to be a professional photographer. Well, can you start with just that one class or taking like an online coaching course or whatever it is, where we get again that perfectionism, like, no, I have to do this truest desire to the most grandiose scale.
Yes.
But how can we strip that back and start somewhere? And I think that is such a good point when you're bringing up time and money, because that's not always accessible to the truest desires that we have at that moment in that season, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Like, I love that, the idea of starting small. And I know that's something you share a lot about. But it's like, first of all, it can feel discouraging when we have these really big goals and like you have no experience in that, right? That can feel super discouraging. And then it's also a really great way to get feedback for yourself if this is actually something that you enjoy. Like, I know I've been following a little bit on your journey to a marathon, which I think is like so exciting, right? And
Thank
what
you.
if somebody had this goal and they set those benchmarks and all that and they ran the 5K and they're like, you know what, like, I actually hate running, I really hate this, right? And so
Yeah.
like that's some really good feedback that if you hate running, you probably don't want to run a marathon. And so I like the idea of small goals for that, because you're learning more about yourself along the way.
Yes. Oh my gosh. That's a very relatable example, because I have had that thought. And I'm like, why did I go from zero to, because truly that for me is 0 to 100. Like, zero to a marathon is, I don't know how I got there. But there have been so many moments where I'm like, Taylor, why didn't you just say half marathon? Why didn't you just say 20 miles or so? I'm just like, okay, well, it's in the universe, and whatever, my end result ends up being, it will be what it will be. But yes, that that's a very true example. Like, start with the 5K, start with the 10K, something like that. So I like that.
Yeah, like, if anything, just to get clear on, like, do you enjoy this? Is this something you want to do?
Yes.
And yeah, and like, I know this has come up before too in your podcast, but like, what's the why? Like,
Hmm.
what, I mean, a marathon represents a lot of different things to a lot of different people. And so what is the root holding someone there to doing
Yeah,
it? Yeah.
absolutely,
Hmm.
definitely. Mental resilience is my why. I just want to prove that I can, it's so physical, but it's really, really mental when you get in those trying moments, and that's the cool part to me.
That's awesome. That's so cool.
Yeah.
Hmm.
So in my past, I know a big part of feeling trapped and stuck was losing hope or feeling lost. And I did kind of want to just share some things that worked for me in the past. So I have three specific things that have sort of helped me. And I notice if I focus on the problems, I only see problems. So if that's true, then if I were to focus on solutions or possibilities, would I then only start to see solutions or possibilities? And that is something huge that I coach on, is like being a solution oriented badass. Someone throws a problem at you, you're like, what's the solution? What's the solution? And it's just like problem, solution, problem, solution. Like, the minute somebody says a problem, you're looking for the solution. Um, where so often I think that we're focused on the problem. We're just like looking at being stuck and feeling lost and having no hope, instead of what are my solutions, what are my possibilities.
Hmm. Hmm.
Um, Something else that comes up for me too is that I like to talk to somebody that I see as unstuck, right? So it's like, be that person, but are there things that with someone you admire, you could get vulnerable and sort of pick their brain about what's going on so that you can emulate some of the things that are working for them, right? Um, and I also think about like if you can't actually speak to that person, you're like, oh, I see this, who XYZ person online that I feel is unstuck, then you could write down some of their attributes or characteristics or actions that they're taking in life and figure out how to bring some more of those into your own life. And then the last thing that works for me too is like making sure I'm taking care of myself, right? So, are you tired? Are you dehydrated? Like, it's only natural for us to feel in that vicious circle of stuck when the negative thoughts come so easily and the feelings of loss come so easily if we're tired, if we are sleep deprived, we don't we don't like the world, we don't like ourselves, we don't like nothing when we're tired, when we're dehydrated, and the body and the mind are so related that when your brain tries to like pull from your physical state and it's depleted, there's those negative thoughts just are pouring out of you. And so those are kind of those things that I feel like being solution focused, talking to somebody who you see as unstuck, and then truly figuring out how to take care of yourself. And that could be as simple as going to bed an hour earlier. Yeah, maybe you toss and turn, but maybe you get fixed 15 extra minutes at the end of the day. Or, I only drink 8 ounces of water normally. Maybe you can bump that up to 16. Like just trying different things. Again, that's starting small. But having tools that you can pull yourself out of this trap of being stuck, I think is so crucial.
Hmm. Oh yeah, I think those are great tools. I was just jotting some things down as you were talking that were coming up, and I want to name too that this, like, for the person listening, this is your process. I think sometimes people like to move quickly through changes, and sometimes people need more time to process what got them there in the first place. And both ways are beautiful, and there's no right or wrong way to do this. And that feels really important because I think oftentimes people feel discouraged when they hear something like leap and the net will appear. It's for some people that works. For some people it's like, yes, I just need to let go and I'll figure it out. And other people it's they need to start small. They need to really process what happened. And that's important and
Yes,
beautiful.
I think that is such a good point because this episode is about creating forward momentum, but that doesn't mean that we're going at light speed. Like that. I love Robin from Peloton. She says forward is a pace, and I say that all the time. So I'm like, forward is a pace. It doesn't say how fast you're going or how slow you're going. You're moving forward, and so that's what this episode is about: is forward momentum. And I'm glad you brought that up because that's a very easy thing to then get in our head about, right? Well, I'm not doing it as quickly as that person, or oh, I wish this was happening faster for me. Where it's like you have to figure out what momentum looks like for you. And that could be just a soft wave that turns into, a big old wave eventually, but it's that ripple effect. You have to just create the first ripple.
Yeah. Yeah. And and because a lot of my work is that I'm a psychotherapist, I want to name too that this this work will come easier for some people than other people. And if you're someone that's really struggling with, let's say, depression or anxiety, um, like let's give those things attention and focus and get you into a place where you're feeling really good, and then we can start to build a life that feels really good. And I just want to name that too because I think yes, there's so much that's in our control, like about getting enough water and getting enough sleep, and all of those things are so important. And also, if you need an outside therapist or you need an outside coach, if you're not dealing directly with a mental illness but are needing support, those things are really important. And to build your team to help you feel like you're in a really well, healthy space to have that forward
Yeah,
momentum.
bringing up bigger things like that I think is so important. Is I feel like
Mhm.
our thoughts, our community, our job, and our relationships make up a pretty solid picture of our lives. And sometimes those are bigger situations that we feel stuck in. Like, what would you
Mhm.
say if someone is experiencing bigger situations about being stuck, like where they live, the job they're in, the relationship they're surrounded by, things that are a bit more difficult to change quickly?
Yeah. So I want to go back again to you get to choose the pace. I think that's really important. Like you get to choose the pace. And I also think that reflecting on what do you wish someone would give you permission to do is a really helpful reflection. And again, you can do that in a journal. Because that's going to give you an idea of like where your true desires really are and why we can reflect on why you feel like you need permission for that too. You know, you have the power to give yourself permission in other areas, in all areas of your life. And so, yes, the idea of like what Robin says of, I loved that, you know, forward is a pace. So no matter what steps you're taking, like you are moving forward. Um, I think getting support, I am all for building your team, right? Whether that is, again, like a therapist, a coach, like friends that really believe in your dream, family members, whoever it is, like surrounding yourself with that team, telling them these bigger ideas, these bigger goals, and allowing them to help support you through that. So, all of those can be really, really great starting places when there's something
Definitely.
bigger.
And kind of going back to that conversation about your truest desires, if it is a desire for a different job or a different living situation, what are steps that you can take today to sort of build towards that in the future where it's not something that can be changed quickly. Maybe you can't move tomorrow, or you can't change jobs tomorrow, or you can't get rid of that job and start your own business tomorrow. But what can you do? What is in your realm of solutions that can get you to that place in 6 months or a year?
Yeah, and that's sometimes where those pings come in, right? Like it can be such a little thing. If you're interested in starting your own business, can you, like join a Facebook group that's, women in business or whatever group you identify with? Are there little things you can do? Can you talk to someone that owns their own business? I think really scaling it back can be helpful. And those bigger things like where you live or who you're dating or your job, all that stuff, I think that comes from oftentimes like years and years of people pleasing, right? Like when we get into a place where we're feeling that stuck, oftentimes, again, going back to that feeling I named at the beginning of the episode of how did I get here? Like who who was I saying yes to that led me so off course of what I really, really want in my life? So a lot of, even if you're trying to like move away from or like make a bigger change, I think along the way really reflecting on maybe your people pleasing tendencies, many of us have them, and thinking about how can I go about things in a
Yeah,
different way now.
definitely. Apparently I love Robin from Peloton because I'm about to quote her again. But one of the things she also says is, I like the way she words this, is being helpless isn't sexy. And I'm like, it's so true because it's just like, and this is beyond if we're not talking about like anything that has to do with mental health or whatever, because that does take you to that place. But just as a person who has so many resources these days, it's like being helpless isn't sexy, right? Like you can find your community in so many different ways, and there's really a lot of negative about social media, but there's also a lot of positive about it. And that, like, whatever it is that you're going through, you can find somebody who's been through it before. Like, that is, it's facts. Like whatever, in even as specific as something that may be so strange or weird or whatever, TikTok has shown me that we are literally all the same people, just going about life in different ways, but we really we really are just like the same people. But somebody has gone through what you're going through and wanting to create forward momentum, but feeling stuck in bigger things like their job, like their home, like their relationships. And you just have to be like, navigate what those resources could be. I'm talking Facebook groups, or or people, starting to share, and then people start to share back. But I just think that that's like, being helpless, right, is just going to keep us in that stuck state where, use your resources, figure out where your people are, and lean on them. And that, like, you did bring that up, that could be your team, your immediate team, or it could be something that you're concerned about sharing with your immediate trusted team, and you want to reach out to the public and get their opinion before you do that. But I just think that that's such a fun way to put it. Like, it's not sexy.
Yeah. Yeah. And like to join with that, to like, I don't know, equal that out a little bit too, is that, I mean, be tender with yourself. There's a reason that you've made these choices to begin with. There's a reason that you are in this space that feels stuck. And oftentimes that can go back to childhood and feeling like we needed to make decisions in order to get love or approval or all those things, right? And as an adult, you get to make decisions that feel good to you. That is part of being an adult, is getting to make decisions and then have those consequences, positive or negative, and really owning that. So I encourage people to be really tender with themselves and to know that at one point in your life, making the decisions to where you are now really served you. And that could have been an emotional need that got served. Maybe you said yes to a job you didn't want to take because of the paycheck and you needed the paycheck at that time, right? Like there are reasons that you are in the place that you are, and we can really honor that
Yes,
too.
absolutely. That is a great place to start, I believe. But if you're looking to start today, it's like, start from a place of tenderness. Go lean into, like, what is that pain that you're feeling? Reflect on that. Give yourself grace, but use that to progress, to create your plan of what that forward momentum is going to look like for you. I
Yeah.
would love, Amy, if you could share about your business and how listeners can connect with you.
Yeah, so I am a licensed therapist in Tennessee, so I can see any therapy clients in the state of Tennessee. My office is in Nashville, so I can see in person patients in Nashville, and then I offer telehealth as well for anyone in Tennessee. And then I also offer life coaching services that I can offer globally, which is so fun and work I really enjoy too. And I've structured my containers, my offerings for coaching as 1 month, 3 month, and 6 month. And um, the reason I did that is one, sometimes you just want a little taste, and then also to make it more accessible for people that maybe just, what they have right now is they can put an investment towards 1 month of coaching, and I think that's beautiful, and yeah, and a really awesome way to get started.
Awesome. I love that. Well, I am so grateful for you sharing some action steps to create forward momentum, giving yourself grace the whole way, being tender, and just really listening to why you're stuck, why you want that forward momentum, and what you hope to come out of it. So, thank you so much for being here, Amy.
Thank you so much for having me. It was great talking with you, Taylor.
All right, y'all, it is time for the quote of the episode. We have another unknown quote this week. The quote is, "We are imperfect beings in an imperfect world. Mistakes must be accepted as part of the forward process." Being stuck is a lesson that maybe you needed to rest to come back stronger. Remember to keep falling forward. Take that into your week, your month, maybe even your year, and start that forward momentum. As always, thank you for being here. Thank you for being in my community. I'm so glad you showed up today, and let's go get there. Look at you, crushing it. Thank you for joining me for another episode of the Tailor Made Tasty podcast. My hope is you always leave with a takeaway to implement in your own goal-crushing journey. I would love if you could take a moment to leave a review. And if you're looking for a community of goal boss badasses just like you, be sure to check out tailormadetasty.com/membership.